Hello, welcome to Chapter 3 Podcast, the show for readers of science fiction, fantasy, and romance. This is Season 1, Episode 18. I'm Bethany, your host, and today I am joined by return guest Rachel from Reads with Rachel on YouTube, and a veteran now of the Chapter 3 Podcast, Liene from Liene's Library, to talk about the new Netflix adaptation of Shadow and Bone, which should be really fun. If you want to support the podcast and get early access to episodes and exciting bonus content from our guests, check out our Patreon linked in the show notes. And a big thank you to all of our patrons, with a special shout out to our world-expanding patron, Trina. Your support makes this possible. Before our conversation today, it's time for On My Radar, where I'll share some recent or upcoming book releases in science fiction, fantasy, and romance that I'm excited about, and then our guests will have the opportunity to share one as well. The books for today's episode will be released between May 26th and June 8th, 2021, with the exception of guest recommendations, which may include any upcoming release. First up, we have two releases on June 1st. The Chosen and the Beautiful by Nevo is a queer fantasy retelling of The Great Gatsby with a Vietnamese protagonist as Jordan Baker. It's a really interesting take on it. I just finished it myself, and I think it's going to be an interesting one to see people read. Then also on June 1st, we have The Darkness Outside Us by Schreifer Elliott, which is a queer YA sci-fi mystery about two boys alone on a spaceship who are piecing together what has happened. One of them has no memory of the past. Looks really interesting. Then two books coming out on June 8th. First up, Real by Kennedy Ryan is the first book in a new romance series with a Hollywood tale of wild ambition, artistic obsession, and unrelenting love. Kennedy Ryan always writes fantastic, hard-hitting romances, and I'm really excited for this one. And finally, also on June 8th, we've got The Jasmine Throne by Tasha Suri, which I'm very excited about. This is the first book in a new trilogy inspired by the history and epics of India, in which a captive princess and a maidservant in possession of forbidden magic become unlikely allies on a dark journey to save their empire from the princess's traitor brother. It looks amazing. Really looking forward to that. With that said, please join me in welcoming Rachel and Liene to the show. Thank you guys for joining me.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah, should be fun. If you guys want to briefly introduce yourselves to our listeners, I know you both have been on here before, and share your pick for an exciting upcoming release.
You can go, Liene.
Well, they should already know who I am, but I am.
You've been on several episodes.
I'm Liene from Liene's Library, and I will be sharing a new-ish release. That is to say, a new edition of an old book. Tor is going to be releasing a hardcover edition of Gene Wolfe's Shadow and Claw, which is a bind-up of the first two books in the Book of the New Sun, Shadow of the Torturer and Claw of the Conciliator. I am currently reading these books and really enjoying my discovering this old SFF book series and seeing kind of the origins of some currently written SFF. So in any case, it's really cool to finally now have a cool hardback edition. Me being a collector of pretty books is excited to have a cool edition, because otherwise it's only the originally released hardcovers from the 80s, and that's, good luck. So on June 8th, you can get your very own hardcover.
I'm Rachel from Reads with Rachel. I do fantasy and contemporary reviews, but I'm in a fantasy kick right now. So one book that I'm really excited for is Six Crimson Cranes, which comes out on July 6th, I believe, by Elizabeth Lim. It's about a girl named Shiori who has forbidden magic, and she lets it loose, and then her stepmother finds out and banishes her and makes it so that she can't speak anymore. And if she talks, her brothers, who her stepmother has turned into cranes, will die. So I think that sounds really fun and very high stakes. So I'm excited for it.
That sounds like a fairy tale that I'm.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
I think it is a fairy tale, but I don't know. I don't think it's a typical Little Mermaid, or
I think it's originally about swans.
Oh, okay.
That I know about.
Oh, interesting.
Like the Swan Princess type thing.
No, I mean it's about her brothers being swans, and she's not allowed to speak because of some curse on them, and I forget why they get into the situation, but there is a fairy tale like that.
Ooh, I'm gonna have to find out more about that.
That's cool. Well, the cover is stunning. I have seen that.
Yeah, it's the same cover artist as who did Elizabeth Lim's other series. Mm-hmm. The what's that called? Oh gosh, Spin the Dawn. And
Yeah,
the cover
yeah.
artist for that is just incredibly talented.
So pretty. Yeah. It's a stunning cover. Awesome. Those are great picks. So tonight, well, you're getting this in the morning. Today, today we're going to be talking about Shadow and Bone, which is a recent adaptation Netflix did of two series by Leigh Bardugo, the Shadow and Bone trilogy and the Six of Crows duology. And to be upfront, I think all of us are fans of the show, so you are not going to be getting like naysayers. So if you're looking for criticism, like you're probably not going to get any heavy criticism here, but I'm sure we have some critiques to make. I have probably more of the books than the show, to be honest, but we're going to talk about it, and hopefully this will be fun and interesting for everybody. Thank you to Rachel and Liene for joining me on this. I thought you guys would be good people to have this conversation with.
Yeah, I think
I've
Liana
had-
and I have watched the show more than once at this point, more than twice probably.
I was gonna say, like, I've
So-
had Shadow and Bone on the brain ever since watching it, so I just like constantly am thinking about it. So
Yep.
we may as well talk out loud about it.
Yep.
I just feel really accomplished that I finished the entire thing in like 2 weeks because I never do that. So that was
Finished it the first day it was out. So
Okay, so I thought one place, maybe a good place to start with this is background with the books. What of the books have you read? We could all kind of share like what has your experience been prior to the show?
Like, what books of the Grishaverse have we read?
Yes.
Okay. For me, I've read all of the books except the novellas at this point, which I don't know why I have put the novellas off, but I have. So I've read the Shadow and Bone trilogy, Six of Crows, and then the King of Scars duology, which I just finished Rule of Wolves a couple of days ago, and it was a time.
Okay.
Yeah, all of them except the novellas.
Okay. Cool.
yeah, I read the trilogy, the Six of Crows duology. I haven't yet read Rule of Wolves, but I did read King of Scars, and I have read Language of Thorns, but I haven't read the Lives of Saints.
Okay. So I've probably read the least and like have been the worst about finishing things. So like I've read the Shadow and Bone trilogy. I have read Six of Crows, but not Crooked Kingdom. But I have read King of Scars. So like I know the spoilers for Crooked
Okay.
Rachel sounds exactly like I did when I found that out.
Yeah,
Oh,
I know. I'm not bothered by it. It's fine. I do plan to read Crooked Kingdom. It is on my list
When I
to read,
found out you
and-
hadn't read Crooked Kingdom, I was like going through the catalog of previous conversations in my brain, being like, "What have I said about this duology?"
And I was like, what do I need to not say here?
It's fine. It's all fine. I am not that bothered by spoilers, unless it's like a thriller. And I have read The Lives of Saints, which I loved, actually. So
Yeah, I'm really interested in reading that. I heard that Ben Barnes did the audio, so
the audio is really good. I had an audio, like a review copy of the audiobook.
nice.
And I read along physically while listening to the audio, and it was a wonderful experience. Highly recommend.
Oh, I like that. I might do
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, it was great. Okay, cool. So like we've all read quite a significant amount going into this. Thoughts? What did you think of the adaptation? They made some changes, I think interesting ones. What are your kind of initial thoughts on as a whole?
Leanna, you can go.
I went first last time. You're just doing this so that you can prep your attack.
She makes a good point.
Okay. I think that they did a really good job with almost everything. I think that there were a couple of like weird plot holes that I picked up upon like the second, possibly third watch of it. Don't judge me. But other than that, I think that they did a really good job making changes in things that I did not like from the books. Something that I had a complaint about was just I felt like they didn't have enough of like Grisha training. There was very little on-screen presence of like Botkin, which I thought was a really important character. And I don't recall ever seeing any Oh shoot, what are the people who manipulate water? Oh my god, it's been a long day.
Squallers?
No, that's the wind.
Tide makers?
Tide makers, that's it.
Hmm.
I don't remember ever seeing any tide makers on screen, and I thought that was kind of a bummer because that left out an entire piece of the training that we could have seen with Botkin and all of the other Grisha, but we didn't really see a lot of training.
In general, didn't really go too much into like the different orders and the different like
No.
kinds of Grisha.
Yeah.
Well, they were trying to accomplish a lot.
Yes. Yeah.
I feel like we would definitely see more of that. Well, at least more of the various kinds if it gets renewed for a second season, because you would have more of maybe Grisha on.
Well, I mean, in Six of Crows, you even get tide makers and squallers and heartrenders. So.
Right. But this is not following Six of Crows, even though it is following characters from Six of Crows, which is interesting.
Right, but for season 2, I meant like then you would definitely, even in Ketterdam, you'd see those things.
True. I thought it was an interesting choice combining the series and giving us kind of like a prequel sort of to Six of Crows, like backstory.
Yeah, I think the thing it did most weekly, meaning weak, not like not like the days of the week. I think you know what I mean, like not strong. Was introducing Nina and Matthias. I think if you've read the books, then it was sufficient because you can fill in the gaps because you know what happens in the book. But if you don't know these characters at all and you've never read Six of Crows and you don't know what their deal is, it is very like rushed and sudden and thrown in there. And for one, you definitely don't feel like you know why you're being shown this. I mean, if you don't know who they are, like I didn't think of it from that perspective until I talked to people who hadn't read the books. And I was like, oh, there's Nina and Matthias. Like, great, we get to see them. But if you don't know who they are and you don't know they're going to be in Six of Crows, you're like, who are these people? Why do I care about any of this? And then the turnaround on them developing affection and trust, again, like it kind of gives you the like montage-y highlights of what happens in Six of Crows, but Six of Crows does a better job convincing you that this is possible, whereas the show rushes through it so quickly that like I know that if you haven't read the book, most people are like, that's unbelievable.
Yeah,
I fully agree with that. They skipped an entire episode. I think it was episode 6 we see the most of them, right? And then episode 7 we see nothing, and then they're back in episode 8 and it goes from him saving her life to them making plans to possibly run away together, and I'm like, wait, hold on. No.
Yeah, I guess it's hard when you're juggling so many storylines this way.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's a fair criticism. I am still annoyed that they didn't actually go with a plus size actress for Nina. I mean, I know she's not skinny, the actress they chose, but she's not really plus size either. She's just average. I'm still annoyed about that.
Yeah, I feel very conflicted about that whole situation because on the one hand, Nina is my all-time favorite character in fiction. So seeing her on screen is huge for me. But the fact that they were not true to who she is and how Lee wrote her was, it was disappointing.
Yeah. I mean, I think the actress they chose did a pretty good job, but I'm still just like, come on. Like, we could have gotten representation that is sorely needed.
We could have had it all.
We're just like, but instead, like, to me, what it signals is, like, average sizes is the same as being plus size, which, no. It's not the same thing. Only comparatively when you have very, very thin actresses playing all the other roles.
Yeah,
I mean, then average bodies are also being depicted as super skinny per usual, which is also not the best situation.
No.
Per usual.
Right, exactly. Per usual, yeah. So I'm annoyed about that. Even though I do think she did a good job, but I wish that they had taken that more seriously.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, I definitely was very excited to see the crows on screen. Like, and I think that was, at least for me, the coolest moment of seeing the trailers as well. I feel like that was true of a lot of people, seeing them like come to life in that way. I thought was pretty amazing.
I was gonna say, there's that clip of Leigh Bardugo on set. She's obviously like emotional meeting all of them, but specifically the moment when Freddie Carter, dressed as Kaz, walks out with
Oh my
Inej,
gosh.
and she was like, "This is kind of eerie, like seeing you
Yeah.
guys."
Yeah. They did so good. And like I also love the fact, right, that with Kaz, where, you know what I mean, because like Leigh, the author of the books, for anyone who doesn't know, but like Leigh is disabled and uses a cane, and so it's cool that like we have a character who is so iconic, who is also disabled and a badass. Although I have thoughts, but tell me.
Are we gonna hear the thoughts?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
So
okay.
I like okay.
Cool.
So it sorry, it struck me as a little bit like weird, the scene where like Pekka Rollins comes in and his guys like beat Kaz up kind of, and I was like, really? Like I feel like I don't know, it felt off to me in terms of like what I'd seen from Kaz in the books. Am I the only one who felt that way?
Off in what way?
I had trouble believing that he would like let himself be put in that situation at this point in his life, you know?
Leanna, what book is it that Kaz actually lets himself get the absolute crap kicked out of him? Is it
That's in
Crooked
Crooked
Kingdom?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
Okay.
that without having read Crooked Kingdom, I could see why you would feel that way. But there is a point in Crooked Kingdom where he actually does that, where the whole of the crows, like the actual the dregs, they turn on him, and he goes back into the club and lets himself get beat to hell, andNej is like, do you want me to step in? And he's like, absolutely not. And it was pretty iconic that he like lets himself get beat to a pulp and then has a point to make. So I think that without reading Crooked Kingdom, yeah, I could see why you might feel that way.
That's interesting. I guess it just felt to me in this case, it didn't feel like he was letting it happen, but that like he couldn't do anything about it. That was how it read to me on screen.
I guess it also, I mean, to me, like, this is Kaz Bricker before Six of Crows. And so,
Yeah.
like, arguably, when you meet him in Six of Crows, he has learned a lot of lessons across his life. And who's to say that the most recent lesson that wasn't, you know, right before the events of Six of Crows?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good point.
So, things that you loved about it as an adaptation.
I would like to say everything.
I think that so I had a lot of issues with the books.
Wait, with the Grisha trilogy and Six of Crows, or just the Grisha trilogy?
Sorry, yeah, just the Grisha trilogy.
Okay, we were about to fight again.
I mean, no.
It wasn't gonna be pretty.
So, yeah, I have absolutely zero issues with the Six of Crows duology.
Okay, we can be friends.
5 stars all around. But yeah, the trilogy itself, I just being in Alina's head was really tough. I couldn't deal with it. I actually, the last time I tried to reread Ruin and Rising, I ended up DNFing. So I was like, I know what happens, and I don't want to listen to her anymore. So I'm all done.
Man, Alina is the worst. So
it's really hard to be in her head.
If Book Alina was Jessie May, it wouldn't be so hard.
True.
Yeah, like, well, in the show, there's so much. I mean, I liked them both so much more in the show than in the books.
Oh my gosh, yeah, seriously, yeah. I think that just being out of Alina's head, for one thing, made a huge difference, and on top of that, aging up the characters.
Yes,
and
in my head, they were older anyway.
Yeah, that's how I read all YA books, which I know.
That's because we watch TV shows where, everyone in high school is played by 28-year-olds. So
True.
Riverdale. Leanna and I watch Riverdale.
Yeah, exactly.
Fair point. No, well, I mean, like, I read them and I'm like, they're not 16. They're like 20.
Yeah.
Like,
except for once in a while when they act super childish and you're like, oh my God, you're 16.
Yep.
I mean,
yeah. All of that, like, difference between the books and the show just made it so much more enjoyable. Like, I like the idea of the books, but I think that just from being in first person POV all the time, that the books really suffered for that. So the show takes that out and makes it way more enjoyable.
I also think that I was pleasantly surprised by the fact that they didn't. I obviously knew that they were deciding to make Alina's character canon Shu, and so they cast Jessie May, which obviously that's something before you watch the show. When you see the cast and you know that they announced that was the decision. What we didn't have any way of knowing is how much they would weave her Shu identity into the plot and into like actively discussing it like between the characters, and it's not just like, oh well, she's Shu, like isn't that nice, like where it's the way she's othered by that, and the way that also parallels the way that Grisha are othered, and like having the like kind of propaganda type stuff around that's kind of racist looking, and have weaving that even into Mal and Alina's relationship, how they were kind of like, it wasn't just like two random orphans that kind of hit it off. They were two random orphans that hit it off because they were both getting, bullied because they were being othered. So I liked that was really, really, really like incorporated like that.
I liked that too. I thought it was interesting. I have seen vaguely, because I haven't gone and like really listened to it, but I've like from a distance seen some criticism. I think you guys, I feel like, have probably been more in the like maybe have actually watched more of this than I have, but I know not everybody liked that element. I liked it and thought it was good, but like not everybody seemed to feel the same way.
Yeah, I most of that discourse has been on Twitter, and I really appreciated hearing from Asian reviewers who felt like both they enjoyed feeling like they were represented, but also dissenting opinions talking about how it felt a little bit like racism from the white gaze, and that it didn't really take into account like microaggressions and things like that. So I can understand both sides, and I appreciate that people are talking about it, and I think that it's good for those of us who aren't, Own Voices reviewers to listen to what everybody has to say about it who is Own Voices.
Yeah. No, it's interesting because I think something like that, when you have, choices being made about representation, you frequently will, like people are not a monolith and experiences are not a monolith. And I think frequently will have people who feel differently about it. So yeah, that's interesting.
I think that's something that I've talked to my husband Carlos about this. He's a big fan too. I think that's something that they should have done and should do going forward is hire people who have read the books, who want to consume the further content, people within the book community, hire them as consultants. I think that would be really helpful for them to not upset people again.
Yeah, but will they?
Probably not.
There have been a few big controversies. I don't know how much we want to get into all of this or how much you guys have seen of it. But like, I know the other thing that I've been seeing a lot of discourse on TikTok, in bookish TikTok, has been that they used brownface with Amita's stunt double.
Yeah, I did hear about that.
Yeah, Leigh Bardugo has already spoken up about that.
Yeah. It was a whole mess. I don't really know what else to say other than that's a whole mess. And I hope that they make amends and do better going forward.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and I think I saw one person who made a very good point that like Bollywood has a whole film industry, and it would probably not be that hard to find somebody willing to work as a stunt double. They will do better.
I think that anybody who may have said that they couldn't find a stunt double was lying. I mean, if you can find somebody to cast as Inej, then you can and do so perfectly, because Amita Suman is Inej. Like she embodies that character perfectly. I don't see why you can't find a stunt double to do the same. Yeah.
Agreed. Those are some of the controversies. Did you guys have any other things that you like, either things that you really loved that you want to talk about, or things that you were not a fan of?
Things I wasn't a fan of? I really cannot think. I can't think of anything. I loved it so much. I watched it too many times to count at this point.
I think a lot of the reaction when it first came out was even people who went in excited and people went in with high expectations were like, that was way better than it had any right to be. We were not ready. We were not expecting it to be so good.
Yeah, yeah, same, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, I thought they did an amazing job at adapting it. I thought the actors that they cast in generally did an incredible job. I love Jesper in the show so
Oh my gosh,
much.
I loved him so much.
It's one of the things that was what could easily have gone the most wrong was inventing an entire prequel plotline for Kaz and Nej and Jesper, and they wove it in so seamlessly that if you haven't read the books, you wouldn't guess that that's not part of the books.
Yeah, I agree. I think that the conductor was so well placed, and that whole plot line was so excellent. It really, a lot of the scenes felt like Lee had written them herself, like from the dialogue to the character.
I suspect she probably did to some degree.
Yeah, at least some of it. Well, she was a producer on the show, so I'm sure she had at least some involvement in some of it, but I don't know how much.
Yeah, I
don't think we'll ever know, but
I assume whenever they put like an author on executive producer that they do so sort of like an honorary thing. So I hope that she's more involved and continues to be more involved than, just that capacity of an honorary type thing.
Yeah, I hope so too. So my favorite character from the original trilogy and my favorite relationship, I will say, Liene, I think we talked about this before I had gotten farther into it, and she ended up growing on me, but initially
I knew she would.
She did. But I love Jenya and David. I wanted more of David, actually, like of their relationship, but at the beginning, like the first few episodes, I was like, I don't know about this Jenya. I don't feel like they're making enough use of her, but like they really, I think, did a pretty good job with her. But I want more of her and David. They're my favorite. I want a whole novella that's just Jenya and David.
I mean, in fairness to them, there was already more of David and Jenya in the show than there is in the first book. So like they already did more of that than you're entitled to if you're just going off the books.
I guess so. But you know what it probably is that the whole time I was reading it, I was like, can we just be in Jenya's head and not Alina's, please? And thank you. That would be great.
See, that was exactly my thing about the books is upon reread, I was like, you know what would make this better is if it were written exactly like Six of Crows. Yeah. If I were getting different POVs in third person, I would be so much happier.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, I think, this was the first one was her debut novel as well, right? So, I mean, part of it is like, she's grown as a writer and a storyteller over time, but
yeah, absolutely.
If it took the Grisha trilogy to give us Six of Crows, that's a price I'd gladly pay.
That's a fair point. Yeah.
I feel like there's so much that we could talk about.
I know that there's a lot that, and I think this is more true for the Six of Crows characters than for the Shadow and Bone characters, that there is so much in those books that is character introspection and internal trauma and internal issues and internal emotional journeys. And those actors had to start to show us that, on their faces in their interactions. And like for Kaz, for example, the fact that people are able to pick up on some of his like hang-ups and issues and PTSD just from how Freddie played the character. It's not even lines. Like a lot of it is not even dialogue. It's just like those choice moments of like how he looks and how he flinches and how he reacts to stuff that it's always really difficult when going from book to movie to show us that stuff that is on the inside of the character that the reader is privy to, that there's no, unless you're going to go the 80s Dune route and have a voiceover telling us their internal thoughts, which I don't recommend. Like that's really tricky. And I think that credit to the actors, like they did really show us the internal journeys of those characters.
Yeah, I agree. I think they did an amazing job. And I think you start to see these relationships between characters starting to develop, and it was so good.
There it is. Oh, it was so good. That's all there's to say about
it. Okay, so we've touched a little bit on this, but I in the book fandom, there is kind of a split, right, between people who like Alina and Mal and like them together.
You're just going right for it. All right.
You know, we got to be controversial here. And people who feel differently. So maybe we could like briefly share our perspectives on that in the book versus the show.
I just imagine this devolving into that one video where the guys are arguing over the Wicked Witch of the East. Like that's where this ends.
I was gonna say, Rachel, it was really nice to be your friend for the first half of this podcast. You on the other side.
I think that the show did a really good job of taking something that a lot of people hated, myself included, which was Alina and Mal, and fixing literally every single problem I had with him and making me love Alina and Mal. And it's not as if I ever read the books and thought, man, I would really like Alina to be with the Darkling. I just didn't want her to be with anybody because I thought that all of her options were terrible. But the show, I only want Mal. There is no other option, and I will hear no dissenting opinions from any of the Darklina stands out there.
Word. So that's something we can agree on. We never understood the Darklina stands. And that is like, that's a thing that I can't fight you on right now that I'd love to fight somebody on, is that like, no, the people that are like, that are, you can hate Mal, I'll kind of allow it. But the people who are like anti-Mal but pro-Darkling, and they claim that Mal is so toxic, and I'm like, and you think the Darkling is less toxic than Mal?
No.
Please make it make sense.
I think that there are so many stories out there in which there is not even a heroine, but a protagonist who has inclinations toward going toward the dark side and having a villain who's also sort of a love interest. I think that Furyborn is the book that people who love Darklina should read. Like, I will die on this hill. Just read Furyborn if that's what you want.
True story. Yes.
But I don't ship it in the books or on the show. I just don't. I don't see it.
Well, the thing is too that like I think the Darkling is well written, and I think that the way that you know that temptation towards the darkness or whatever, and the way that he says things that you're like, you're not necessarily wrong. You've just taken this to an extreme that I can't go with you on. I can't condone that. But a lot of what you're saying, like it's that whole like, you know, the dark side has a point. So I think he's well written, and I would like to say that I like the Darkling, except whenever I say that, people are like, oh, you ship that. And I'm like, ugh, no. Ew.
Yeah.
Same. Yeah, same.
Well, I feel the same way too. I mean, like, I like the Darkling. I don't like him for Alina.
Yeah.
What do we think about the fact that he's not called the Darkling in the show? He's called General Kerrigan.
Well, I mean, I think it's trying to make it less blatantly obvious from the beginning that he's the villain. I mean,
I think that's
the Darkling.
When you see him, he's standing with a dark cloak billowing in the wind as he's looking at the shadow fold. Like, that's basically villain material.
I mean, but I think that's probably why. I think they probably wanted to try to, like, prolong it a little bit so people didn't immediately pick up on that he's supposed to be the villain. That's my guess.
The first time he talks to Alina, he puts a talon on his thumb and puts her arm. Pretty sure that's villain.
That's how they do it, Leanna.
Okay.
That's the procedure.
Okay.
I see both sides. Here. Yeah, so I think that they really wanted to make that like a thing, like, oh, he's on his way to becoming the Darkling. And I don't hate it, just because honestly I'm kind of obsessed with Show Mal. So that moment where he calls him Darkling, I'm like, yes, call him that. I love you. Everything Mal does is great.
I was like screaming at the TV when he found out her favorite flower from Mal, and then she gave when she got the flowers from the not the Darkling,
so
General Kerrigan. Like, I kept screaming at Alina, like, don't you know he only knows that? He could only know that if Mal is here. You know he learned that from Mal. Mal has to be here. Figure it out. Put it together. Figure it out.
The absolute audacity of that man. I was so mad at the TV. I was like, absolutely not. Mal did that.
I mean, I low-key would be interested in a spin-off where the Darkling does have somebody who's a good match for him, you know? I mean, because I like him, and I do think seeing him as, like, the romantic protagonist in a story would be very compelling. I just don't like him for Alina.
Again, all I can say is read the Imperium trilogy.
So I, like, reading the books, I did not like Alina. I did not like Mal. I thought they were both whiny
Same.
as hell. I thought Mal was clingy and annoying. And my only thought was, I was like, well, they might as well be together because I don't like either of them and they're both whiny. So they can be together. That's fine.
I was like, I wish happiness on neither of these people. I can't stand either. I wish that they would both pass away so that I could have anybody else's perspective.
But so what the trilogy has that the show obviously doesn't have yet, and that I'm very curious to see if I'm very hopeful that it will go well because the first season was so excellent. But Nikolai.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, Nikolai. But see, that's the thing. You know what? I never liked Nikolai as a love interest for her because he is too good for her. But in the show, I don't know. No, but I really like Mal in the show. But like in the book, I was like, nah, Nikolai's too good for you. No, he deserves someone better.
Like he was too good for her or anything like that. I just, I was like, he was also never really interested in her that way. Like he kind of was, but like not really. Yeah. And I was like, he's on his own. He's good on his own. Like he's that Jack Sparrow-ish chaos energy over there. Just let him be over there.
Like, can we find out if they're getting renewed already? Like, get renewed, please.
Oh my gosh, it's been. I'm like biting my nails over it. Like every time I think about it. Because
did anyone else mishear when Jesper named the goat Milo? Because the first time he said Milo, I heard Wylan, and I was like, he named the goat Wylan. Excuse me.
Okay, so speaking of Wylan, do you think that the hints were there, or am I reading into things where it's like Jesper was talking about possibly hiring an explosives person?
Oh yeah, 100%.
And then Kaz had that explosive thing. So do you think that was a Wylan hint when that part where he is about to face off with the Darkling? Which, by the way, that scene, I literally gasped. I'm so excited. Yeah, and he had some sort of explosive. So I'm like, is that a Wylan hat tip? Or am I reading too much into things?
No, I think you're probably right. I think it's probably a nod to it.
Well, I mean, what does that mean, a nod to it? I mean, like, Wylan is a part of their crew. So, like, I don't know what, like...
Well, since he's not, I guess...
like a nod like because he's not... Yeah, like a fan
like a
thing.
book fan service type thing. Like, because is this telling us, like, be excited because Wylan is coming in your future, or was that just an explosive and I'm reading into things very much?
I mean, if they're renewed, obviously Wylan is coming into our future, and if they're not renewed, there's no Wylan. Like, that's all there is to it.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
I just want to believe that he bought that explosive from Wylan and that we're going to hear about it later on.
Yeah. Wait, I'm sorry. You think Kazbrecker paid money to Wylan for an explosive instead of saying, gimme because you owe me because I protected you on the streets?
I
this
realize
the Kazbrecker that we both know?
Fair enough.
I realize my error here, yes.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, I mean, I think probably it's like a nod for fans of the book. That was what I took from it. And hopefully, if they get renewed, we'll see that come to fruition. I just thought visually this was so well done, like the fold.
Yeah, and if you actually, I mean, it looks honestly so high budget, and they had a good budget, but not that good a budget. Like, they really used it well, the money they had.
It looks amazing. I think they did an incredible job, and I think Ben Barnes did a fantastic job as the Darkling. I also thought it was really interesting that we got more of his backstory, because like some of that was definitely not in the books. Yes.
Yeah, that did not come up in the books. I thought that Lee said that was her favorite episode 7, where we got all that backstory.
Oh, that's my least favorite.
Really?
I was like, what is this? This is wasting my time. Can we not?
I liked it.
I was like, give me more Jesper and
yeah,
but
or maybe
from like
fleshing out fleshing out Nina and Matthias was
Oh
sorely
my God,
needed.
don't
So
get me started.
But I'm so
Dude.
that time could have been spent fleshing out Nina and Matthias instead of this random ass non-existent Darkling backstory.
Yeah, I think that I can understand from like Lee's perspective why that would be her favorite, because that was really what started the whole series for her. Was she asked herself the question, what if darkness was a place? So seeing that piece come to life on screen was probably really exciting for her. I just don't understand why they couldn't have more Nina and Matthias in that episode. I will die on that hill.
Yeah, I mean, I would have liked to see more Nina and Matthias as well.
Yeah.
I feel like all of that just happened so quickly.
Yes. Oh, that drives me bonkers. I was so upset about that.
Yeah.
And there was even a moment where they were in that inn and Matthias is staring at a wolf. What is it called when they're on the wall and it's just their heads?
Taxidermy?
Yes. Okay, so he's staring at a taxidermied wolf head, and that would have been the perfect opportunity for us to have a conversation where he explains who his wolf Trassel is. But we didn't get that, and instead it just like skips over so much important backstory about who Matthias is, and that was disappointing for me.
Maybe
just in general, I mean, there's so many more
Yeah.
conversations in the book that make you see the push and pull of questioning their backgrounds, questioning their beliefs, saying, why do you think this is evil? Why do you think I'm evil? Like, I've seen my people killed by yours. Well, I've seen mine people killed by yours. And like that whole like finding
we don't really
common
get
ground.
much of that. Yeah.
Matthias just comes off extra dumb.
I don't mind it. I don't mind him. Nina makes up for it with her excellency. I love her so much.
Like, Book Matthias isn't dumb. He's just kind of prudish and sheltered and been like indoctrinated and narrow-minded, but he's not dumb. He comes off so dumb in the show.
I will say that the accent makes it worse. I feel like the accent they had him do was just not it. Not it for me. And I think that
because he only says like two things and he says them slowly in an accent. He just sounds so dumb.
I mean, which like you could have a whole conversation too, though, about like how we interpret the way people talk as like sounding dumb or not, and how that can be a problem.
Yeah, I think it was just that the actor is an American, and whatever accent they were trying to have him do, he wasn't hitting it. It just wasn't working for him.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah, I would have liked to see more of them than what we got.
I mean, like there's Matthias is genuinely like a threatening figure. And it's only when they start to get to know each other that like she can kind of start to trust him. But he never really came off threatening at any point in the show. He was always just this big puppy dog.
Yeah, which I mean, you probably had to do because we got so little screen time.
So little. It was so disappointing. I mean, they could have made those episodes 15 minutes longer and I could have gotten more Nina.
Or just cut the Darkling backstory. That's not a thing.
I mean, I liked the Darkling backstory. I thought it was interesting, but
not if it's like sacrificing Nina and Matthias.
Yeah,
we could have both, sure, but if we can't have both, I'm choosing Nina and Matthias.
Yeah, I'm with Liene on this. We may not agree on Mal, but I can agree on this.
We agree on the Six of Crows stuff, and that's what really matters.
That is true. That is accurate.
Yeah, they did an amazing job with the Crows and the casting. Like they really, I feel like, embodied those characters.
They better not mess up Wylan, because then the whole thing comes crashing down.
Yeah.
The thing that I will be real mad about if they mess up is the relationship between Nina and Inej. That friendship is so important to me. And if they don't have that on screen, I'm going to be real mad.
Yeah.
I'm hopeful that they will. I am curious if they're gonna do any more like mingling where like they're gonna try to make part of like make the Six of Crows stuff more interconnected with what's going on in Ravka, if they're going to simultaneously be telling Siege and Storm at the same time, because like the Crows, they have to sail to get to Fjorda in Six of Crows, and we know that Mal and Alina are going to be on a ship for a large portion of Siege and Storm, so like I don't know if they're going to have them cross paths again.
That would be interesting.
Yeah, I'm not sure how they're going to do that with season 2 if season 2 happens, but I do think that they have set this up for if we get a long haul, we will see more of Inej interacting with Alina at least, because I feel like conversations that she and Alina had in the last episode really hinted at that, where she said, you know, if you ever need me,
Yeah.
I'll be, you know, there for you. And
Yeah.
with her knives. So
Yes.
that's important to me. I need to see that.
Okay. Thing that I found super creepy was the whole like antlers sticking out of her neck.
Oh,
They made
Like,
that a lot more macabre than it is in the book.
yeah, like in the book it's just like a big necklace, and like that was so gross.
yeah. I read somewhere, or maybe it was Lee who said it in an interview, where it really shows how grotesque it is, not only like physically, but what he did to her.
Yeah.
With, you know, you put a collar on somebody and it's like, oh, he gave her a pretty necklace, but in reality what he did was he disgustingly enslaved her, and that really showed that. Did it make me cringe? Yes.
Yeah.
Well, also
Yes,
it shows in a very external way the sort of internal violation of taking hold of her power,
Yes.
which also a
Right.
necklace doesn't convey.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's true. That's true. I did think it was interesting. And you know, it's been a while since I read the original trilogy, but it seemed like we got a little more explanation than what we get in the books for the like the creatures. I can't think of a word for them.
Well, it's different than it is in the books.
Yeah.
How the amplifiers work.
Morozovas. Oh, yeah, the amplifiers. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a little bit different. I don't believe that it was. I mean, I know he was called the Bonesmith, right? Morozova in the books, but I don't believe that it was actually like the bones had to be under your skin in order
absolutely
to
not.
work. Also, I feel like amplifiers in general were sort of
More common.
made to be, way more common. Zoya has one. She has a bracelet, and that was like really important to her. And it comes up in King of Scars how important that amplifier bracelet was to her.
The show made it seem like the only amplifiers are Morozova's amplifiers, rather than just like, oh, there's a bunch of amplifiers around, but these ones are like super mega special amplifiers.
Right. Yeah. No, that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it also seemed like it maybe made a little bit more sense because he was talking about like breeding creatures for it. Because I like the thing that always didn't make sense to me reading it in the books is I was like, wait, so if it was just these 3 creatures and then he used them for amplifiers, they're gone. So how are there still amplifiers for her to find? This makes no sense. But like, it seemed more like a genetic breeding program, kind of, maybe the way that they described it in the show, which I was like, that makes more sense if there was like more than one
in
of
the
them.
book he had been creating those creatures, but like he hadn't, you know, like he was working on it and like never ended up making them into amplifiers, so that's why they were still around.
But how would they know that they were amplifiers? Because like, wasn't there like a whole story about like him using the, I don't know, that whole thing never made sense to me. Like,
well, the creatures were like, I mean, he was using merzos, which is creating something that doesn't exist rather than using what's already there. And so these creatures aren't natural creatures.
Right. I know that, but wasn't there like a story in the book of like Book of Saints or something about him using amplifiers from these creatures to do magic? Like, I'm pretty sure that was like a thing that they reference.
Shoot, I don't remember.
Well, I haven't read The Lives of Saints, so
okay,
it's not in the trilogy.
Yeah, I don't think it would have been in the trilogy. I feel like I would remember
I thought
that.
because I thought in the trilogy they referenced that, and that
in the
was
trilogy,
why there was
there's
the
pictures
drawing.
of Saint Ilya or whatever, like with a firebird and with a stag, and like there's all these like lives of saints, which are all these sort of like, you know, religious folkloric kind of stories, which is why there's the whole like, oh, well, that doesn't really exist, does it? That's just like lore and legend, and who's to say which part is legend and which part is history, and blah blah blah. And maybe they were actually Grisha instead of saints, and they kind of have these
Yeah. No, I know
theological
that part, but like specifically when they were talking about him, like the illustration they found of him was of like the animals, but also of him having the bones on his body in the picture. Which this is what always confused me as like a plot hole in the original trilogy, as I was like, wait, but like if he used them, then what? So like the way they described it in the show, made more sense to me. The idea that he was like breeding them in general, and there would have been like descendants of them, and it was like they were being used back then, but there were more of them still, if that makes any sense. Like that made more sense to me.
I don't think
talked
that
about
in
it
the
show.
trilogy he's wearing amplifiers. I think he's just surrounded by the creatures.
I don't think that's right, but maybe we'd have to go back and look. Interesting.
I'm going to be looking at this tonight. I have to know.
Yeah.
I have to know the answer.
Like, it just always read as a plot hole to me when I was originally reading the trilogy, and I was like, what? This makes no sense. But yeah. Maybe I'm
so curious now.
Yeah.
The way we've all read the books, and yet there's still so many questions.
I know. Well, I mean, like, there's a lot of them, and a lot of things happen, so I'm just like curious to see, but it was fun to see it all come to life, and like they really, I thought did a great job of like bringing the world and the cities and the like the little palace and everything.
Yeah, I agree. It really it just made the story better for me. I as I said, I didn't really love the original trilogy, but now I feel like I can enjoy it more if I were to go back and reread, because I have the show to kind of reframe how I think about it.
Yeah.
Especially Mal.
I just like desperately want Lee to write a novella about Jenya and David's love story. They're my favorite. Well, one thing that I couldn't like in the book, it always read to me that David was probably autistic,
like neurodivergent.
Yeah.
I felt that way too.
Like that was how it read to me, which I don't know how much of that we see on screen as much. Like that was one thing that read to me, like seemed different to me. Like he seemed less like that way.
I feel like
he's hardly in it yet. Like they really come into it in Season Storm and Rowan and Rising. We saw him for like 2 seconds.
But he is one of my favorites. So I was clearly analyzing it. I want them to get it right. I'm very invested in this storyline.
I mean, but to do like one of the best Easter eggs, which was the Shadow and Bone in Rovkin book that he was reading.
Oh my gosh, I loved that so much. Yeah. I loved it.
They better spell that so that we can buy it. The Rovkin edition.
Yeah, I agree. I think that moment where they're in the little palace and Aline is about to show her powers to everybody and they're looking at each other, Jenya and David, I thought that was so precious. It's so sweet. I loved that so much from them. And I thought that was
I was kind of surprised
capturing.
I was kind of surprised and sad that she didn't end up using the gloves made by David, because she really relies on David's gloves.
Yes, I was so surprised about that.
She was like, nah, I don't need these. I was like, oh, well, I guess David can just leave.
Yeah, even when she runs away from the palace, she still has those gloves and she's still using them. So I was like, wait, so we're just not doing that? Oh,
although, can we talk about her running away and climbing right into the crows?
Oh my God, I love that.
That was hilarious.
Their trunk of their car, basically.
And Jesper's just like, yeah, we're
just
good.
Ask. Just ask.
That was great. Any sort of final thoughts or things you want to talk about with this?
In summation, it was the greatest thing of all time. And we are not worthy.
I think that this is one of the best adaptations that exists, and I'm just so thankful for it, because there have been some real garbage ones, and this is a treat.
Yeah, I agree. I think they did an incredible job. Like the visuals, the casting, the way they adapted the plot, I think was fantastic. So Netflix really needs to give us a season 2, is basically.
Yeah. They haven't even started filming. We're never going to get it.
Oh my gosh. It's painful.
I know. I mean, COVID has also like just messed up everything.
Like, how long has it been since like we got season 1 of The Witcher? It's going to be like double that at this point.
Yep. And Witcher wasn't even very good.
I liked it.
Okay, but I was very nervous going into Shadow and Bone because Witcher was real like touch and go on the looking of quality, because like some episodes look really high budget and some episodes look really low budget and some
Even
parts were
down to
like
his
super
wig.
budget.
Like
Yeah.
sometimes his wig was there and sometimes
Yeah.
his wig was clearly a wig.
Yeah. And his contact lenses and
Oh
everything.
my lord, the contact
Yeah.
lenses.
So I was like,
That's so
having
funny.
seen
I think
Witcher
I'm
done by
easier to
Netflix.
please on stuff like that. Like
But like Shadow and Bone was way more consistently good.
Yeah.
Like everything
Yeah.
all the time. The costumes, the scenery, the CGI, everything all the time looked top tier.
So they
Yeah.
took stuff that I did not imagine as being very cool, like the cut and Alina's power, and made it so incredible looking. And I
Yeah.
really appreciated that. And I'm like, why didn't y'all do that with The Witcher?
Yeah.
What happened?
It was cool. I did think it was kind of funny that they're I can't think of the word they use in it, but their robes basically are like bulletproof. I'm pretty sure
The
that's
keftas?
not in the books, right?
That
The
is in the
keftas,
book.
yeah.
They
Yeah,
are
it's in the
bulletproof in the
books.
book.
Are they bulletproof?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was
Yeah,
like,
they're
really?
fabricator
Are they?
made.
Oh, okay.
They are, but the one that
Yeah.
like, so only the ones that come from the Little Palace because they're fabricator made. So like the one that you see, well, you don't see it yet, but the one that we hear Nina wearing in Six of Crows when we're introduced to
Yeah.
her, that's like a
Mhm.
piece of crap. It's not made from fabricator
Yeah.
stuff, and
It's just
yeah,
a
it's not
costume.
bulletproof. It's a costume. Yeah,
Yeah. Interesting.
I love that scene of Jesper repeatedly shooting Ivan and in the same spot until he finally like made it through the fabric. And I
Yeah.
thought that was such a great hat tip,
That was
like
cool.
a to the book readers, because he asked like, what are you? Because there's no way that you can just be that good of a sharpshooter, right?
Yeah.
And also there's
Yeah.
that little moment when Inej hands the cane back to Kaz and she said, Jesper fixed your cane.
Yes, that one. Oh my gosh, I love it so much. The book readers were all screaming at the screen.
In fairness, the book readers were hoarse by then at already screaming at the screen for like
Yeah.
the last 7 episodes. So.
Exactly.
True story. Oh man, yeah, it was good. Yay. Well, hopefully, fingers crossed, we'll get a season 2, which would be amazing.
Yes.
Someday at some point. Thankfully, people at least are getting back to filming again, and so we'll see.
Yes.
But generally, amazing adaptation for anyone listening. If you haven't watched it yet, go check it out.
And
They
read
did
Six
a
of
great
Crows.
job. And read
Yes,
Six of Crows.
read Six of Crows.
Yeah, for sure. Awesome. Well, thank you guys for joining me. This was fun.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Again, this has been Chapter 3 Podcast. I'm your host, Bethany. If you enjoyed this episode, we'd really appreciate it if you could rate and review the podcast so we can continue to reach more listeners. You can follow us on Twitter at Chapter 3 Podcast. You can also now find us on YouTube. If you don't want to listen to your episodes via download, you can also find episodes on YouTube. The next episode will be available in 2 weeks, and this episode's bonus content will be available to patrons in the next few days. Thanks for listening.